Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Manga Recap here on November the 20th of 2019. I am Nick. This is Chris. We have so much manga to talk about today. How you doing, man?
Damn straight. We're going to talk about manga. And so much of it. Nick, there's no time for tangents with this much manga to talk about. It's as jam-packed as Pokemon. What Pokemon, you say? Let's talk about the new Pokemon game.
Okay, so I have played absolutely none of it. I haven't played a Pokemon game in years. So
you're like, I'm going to go to my old standby of Gen 4, I think was the last one. Did you play Gen 5?
I played Gen 5 and I didn't like it.
Oh.
So
there you go.
It was definitely I mean, because in recent years I'll give Pokemon credit that, they have kind of changed with the times in terms of not everything has to play exactly the same as it was back in the day, but it was not a fit for me. So I just give up. So
that's very fair.
Thank you for agreeing with me, phone. Yeah. Phone's like, I could never play a Pokemon game, so fuck them all.
Hey, there are plenty of Korean mobile games that do their very best to just mimic the Pokemon experience, but with microtransactions. So sometimes your Pokeballs will break, but if you pay $1, you can keep it together for a little bit longer.
Guaranteed, always. Yeah. It's like the new form of holding AB down is just like you pay $1.
Oh, pay $1, you guarantee that catch. Otherwise, you're risking it. You never know. I mean, that is very close to a couple different mechanics in a couple gacha games I know of. So
it really is. Pay in order to get the much better chance of getting the thing you want. Yeah.
It's pretty brutal. Anyways, we got a lot of manga to talk about, so we should talk about that.
So first off, we're kicking things off with a recommendation. Chris, you said that you had read this back in the day when it was new.
I had checked this out. So it is very notable to stress that the way this series gained sort of infamy or notoriety or whatever you want to say was not because it was Kishimoto's little brother doing it, not because it was...
Which it wasn't, by the way.
Wasn't it?
It's not.
Is this not the O-Parts on the guy?
Him.
Huh.
Nope.
Well, then the only
different guy.
Then the only thing that this series had going for it was that it felt 100% like someone read a fairy tale and was like, all right, just do that. This is popular. Let's just be fairy tale.
Now, in fairness, it is not just a fairy tale knockoff. It is more just like an embodiment of what was popular in the late 2000s in shonen manga. This is very much if you went to someone who's very passionate about a certain type of manga at a certain time, then this is what they would crank out as their first project. Yes. It would not be a surprise. And I'm not going to say that it is it was specifically ripping one thing off. If you are in the mindset of, okay, I've read a lot of fairy tale, and then you start reading this, then you're probably going to think that it's a fairy tale ripoff. But if you read a lot of Naruto and you're thinking about that as you're reading this, you're going to be like, this is kind of a Naruto ripoff too. But I think it's just a matter of keep in mind that this first started in 2008. What was popular in 2008 in terms of manga, and keep that in your mind, and then see how it turned out, and you won't really be surprised. I do think that there is a lot of influence from Machima Hero in this series specifically over some of the other influences. The art style is very reminiscent of his, and as some people in the chat are pointing out, the guy who wrote this ended up going on to do one of the fairy tale spin-offs, which is still ongoing. So I think that, whenever that Hero series comes out, the one that is going to cross over all of Hero's series, this should get a little bit of a nod in there.
Mm.
Get this, have a little bit of a Buster Keel cameo.
Oh yeah, like it's an assist trophy essentially.
Yeah,
And then the
exactly.
Buster Keel theme song plays, and everyone loses their mind for a moment. They're like, "Oh my god, they got it in there!"
There's got to be one guy in the corner like Buster Keel never got an anime.
And I tell that man to leave my party. He is no longer welcome. There's not like, so you kind of summed it up pretty quickly. Where the best way to describe this series is if you had gone up to a 15-year-old kid who's really into manga and said, "Hey, sight unseen, we're giving you a running publication in our series, or a running series in our publication." This is probably pretty similar to kind of what they turn out. It's just it was very much a sort of ground level expectation of what you would expect in battle shonen series around that time, and that's really all there is to say for the most part. There isn't like a ton of depth or interest to the mechanics of the world, or into the characters, or into the art, or really anything that's super noteworthy. It's kind of almost like, I don't know, it's like the Hootie and the Blowfish of manga, where you're like, I mean, it's there, it's okay. I just don't know what to really say on it, other than the fact that, like, once you kind of get through the first couple chapters and you kind of laugh at it, sometimes you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, or oh, that design was a little unique, but for the most part, you're kind of just like, yeah, I mean, of course the fucking dude who's the cool loner eventually joins the group, and of course he's
Yeah.
got the hidden secret that he's got to keep around, you know?
Mhm. There are a couple of bits here and there that are like, all right, that's kind of different. But there's not a whole lot. All right, let me put it this way. So, um, to go through a very brief introduction of the important cast, Keel's your main character. He's a shonen hero. He's selfish, hot-headed, gluttonous. Then the female lead is it's what Lavi.
Ravi,
So
Lavi, something like that.
Robbie Lavi, whatever.
Just
So
call her not
she, not
Felly,
Lucy.
Fusi, something like that.
She's there.
Mhm.
Her thing is that she's a bard, basically. She plays music that powers up monsters because this is a fantasy series with magic, and I would call it swords and sorcery, but there's not actually a whole lot of like knights.
No.
It's very, very. I mean, if you are in the mindset of it's a fairy tale ripoff, it's gonna be very much kind of that. That you go on adventures with a fantasy group. That's not a fairy tale ripoff. That is a fantasy adventure setting. And then Lavi's got this monster partner who was like a flying pig called Mippy, which that was around the point where I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to see like the fairy tale knockoff parts of this because like the first three characters that we meet are a hot-headed guy who punches things, a girl who fights alongside monsters that she summons, and a cute animal mascot guy whose name sounds a lot like Happy,
Hmm.
but whatever. Um, and then shortly, a few chapters in, they're joined by the cold loner rival character whose name also happens to be a monosyllabic color. So instead of gray, he's blue. And he's got water powers instead of ice powers. And it's like, I know you've read Fairy Tale, dude. It's but whatever. So that's their adventure group, and they are looking after this one guy who can remove a curse uh, on Keel, because it turns out that Keel is not actually a human. He is actually a dragon ape, this like scaled giant ape thing, who has been sealed into the form of a human. So that's a little bit of a different approach to the series. Instead of there being a guy with a monster sealed inside of him, he actually is the monster, and he wants to be returned to his original form. And so he works together with Ravi because her powers allow her to power up monsters, and so she actually allows him to put his arm back into his original form, and he fights that way. That's an interesting gimmick. But here's the real issue with this series. it doesn't really stand out because any original idea that it has that could be interesting or unique isn't really pushed as far as it should be. There's an idea that when you hear it, it's like, oh, that could be cool. And then nothing is really done with it that capitalizes on that potential that could set it apart.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the thing with Keel, and he's just, he's still a guy. There is a thing where he looks down on people like Ravi who fight using monsters because you think he says at first that, oh, you're a coward, you don't fight for yourself. But it turns out it's because he thinks that they enslave monsters, and also one such person is responsible for sealing him. But other than that, he just acts like a general, hot-headed shonen protagonist jerk. He doesn't act like a guy who used to be a huge monster. And is now trapped in this form. There's and that's kind of just a recurring thing that happens in the series. Any idea you look at on the surface or you hear the idea, you think, oh, that could be cool, and then it's just kind of there. They encounter a monster pretty early on who has eyes. He has an eye for a mouth and mouths for eyes. And so when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that could be cool. But then I was like, looking at the panels, I'm like, well, but his eyes just have teeth and his mouth is just an eye. They're not drawn the way that eyes and mouths would be. His overall facial expression just looks like a face with like palette swaps. And that's it. It's like you have an opportunity to take this concept and really do something weird and different, and it's just kind of the most basic presentation of it instead. And that's the real issue with the series. I mean, it's not bad. It's just entirely forgettable because it is so of the time and doesn't really do anything unique or different.
The only thing I'll disagree on is in not saying it's bad, because I do think it's bad. It's just bad in the right kind of ways. Where you see a scene and you see two characters interact, and it's just the dumbest kind of interactions these characters can constantly have. Like, there's an ongoing fight for a couple chapters where Keel just keeps calling Ravi ugly. And she gets really, and she does like the classic anime female character, like, how can you say that? Bonk, bonk, bonk. And I'm,
ugly pig, ugly.
And you're like, it goes on forever, and you're like, I'm almost kind of like, look, you have to understand, if you're listening to this episode out of order, we've come off of like a sequence of reading manga that are bad because it involves like questionable material or just like really soul breaking kind of experiences. It's nice to read something you're just like, oh, this dude just couldn't write. Like, I can enjoy this so much more on that level. Because even though it has those, as you mentioned, there are points where you see flashes of something good. And I don't want to like say like, oh, well, there's no redeeming the series. I think it's just kind of a place where there's lows and then there's occasional dips up that are not high enough to call highs, but like, I don't know, they're ups, I guess. And you can kind of enjoy it for that regard. Like, so we did the Bleach, Gene Simmons kid who did the ripoff of Bleach. Right, I feel like if he hadn't ripped off Bleach and he had gone with an original idea, this would have been what he came up with. Because it's right what you would kind of do. I wrote stories like this when I was 15. Like, sure. I know what this level is. And it's not like I'm saying like you should never put this out or anything like that. It's just,
no, because that allows you to gain experience and grow.
It's just one of those things that like, it's enjoyable. There's still something endearing about it when you see like someone start at this level and you're like, oh, well, I read series that did these sorts of things. So I read so many series where the boy and girl main characters argue a whole lot about things. So I'm going to make sure I include that in mine. There's going to be a quiet loner and he's really cool and I'm going to do that. Like, there's just things like that you kind of enjoy too.
There are a couple of parts of the series that maybe just go like, what the hell was that? However, so there's an early short story arc where in order to get a lead, they head into town and they happen to stumble across this old man. and they take pity
Yeah.
on the old man and give him a meal. And he's like, "I'll repay you because I'm a great information broker." And they're like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah." And everyone's like, "Ha, that guy's, he's crazy. He doesn't know anything." And the guy's like, "I will show you my pride of being an information broker." It's like, all right, your pride at being what? It's just one of those just shonen things where someone is going to achieve their dream kind of thing. That and it's a thing you see happen in a lot of shonen series where someone is just proud to live their life, but I'm very proud about the fact that I trade information for food. It's such a weird statement to make. And he does have kind of a cool resolution in
Yeah.
his because like he tells them about this treasure that's underwater, and then when they get the treasure, it's just a bunch of rice, and they're like, "What the hell was this?" And he's like, "Well, if I told you what the treasure was, you probably wouldn't have done this for me." And then he holds up, and each single grain of rice has a long note of information on it. And he's like, "I haven't been able to remember all the information that I've gathered, so I hid it away, and it was, swallowed by this monster. So now you've gotten it back for me, and now I can give you a useful information." So it's a cool little thing there. That's probably, honestly, the highlight of the entire series.
I was gonna say, I had forgotten about till you brought it up, and then when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of like so. It's a very dumb explanation because it's sort of like
I can't remember anything. What a great information broker I am.
He's like, oh, I just found out that the mayor's having an affair. I don't have a piece of rice and a small chisel on me. I'm sure I'll remember until I get home. Like, it's a very silly way
Hey,
to.
Grams, why don't you just write it down on a piece of paper? I can't write. But you were able to write it down really tiny on like grains of rice. Yes.
Yes, I'm.
It's so much easier than pen and paper.
You can store like 700 grains of rice in your pocket for the same space as like 2 pens.
Okay, well, why don't you just write it down until you get some rice? Like, all right, I'll try. He like tries to write it down and like slips and goes into his forehead. This happens every time. Give me a needle and a bit of rice, though.
And again, I enjoyed that part of it because it's a very dumb setup, but it's earnestly handled in a kind of creative solution to a dumb problem that was created. Like, this information broker can't help us because he apparently doesn't know his information, but he's an endearing old man, and everyone else just laughs at him and his big boisterous claims. So we're going to try to help him, and in the end, we're rewarded for seeing sort of like the wisdom behind this otherwise sad old man. But like you get to it, and you're just like, my dude had a fucking treasure chest full of grains of rice. You're like, really, anybody could be the fucking the information broker if they got your rice.
Pretty much, because like he doesn't appear to have any of it. We never see him like gather information.
No.
So, all right. So the other bits of weirdness that stood out to me. So you know how some characters in like action shows or manga even have like a sign off victory thing that they do. Mm-hmm. So like in Food Wars, Soma has happy to serve when he whips his headband off. If you watch the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX dub, then Judai goes gotcha whenever he wins a duel. So our heroes in Buster Keel have those little fight-ending signature lines as well. Keel says, "Funky."
Yep. It's a very funky thing.
And Blue, who is, to give you a bit of background, like I mentioned, he's like the Sasuke character. So his entire people were butchered and genocided by this guy that he is seeking out so that he can kill and get vengeance on. His own mother died so that he could get away and live fighting this guy. He is very serious all the time about everything except whenever he's fighting with Keel. Then he gets really childish and whatever. So He says this even when he takes on his, he removes his human disguise and reveals himself to be a water demon guy and gets really serious and goes all out. Whenever he defeats someone, he goes, bingo. Every time!
He's very cool.
He's not cool in the slightest.
It's exactly the level that when you're 16, you think a character is cool. Though you're like, they don't talk a lot, and they just have like a cool phrase. It sounds dorky, but they say it's so cool it doesn't matter. So after you just cut off the head of the man who murdered your fan, you're like, bingo.
So, I mean, you keep talking about how like, oh, when you're a kid writing stuff, it's like this was a professionally published manga. I don't want to get away from that point. So, hey, the mangaka has continued to write other series. Seemingly has achieved his dream of writing just a fairy tale series. So whatever. Can't really say anything to recommend it. If you would like, but I will say this: if anyone ever asks you what was manga like in 2010, just give this to them, and this is a quick, like everything condensed down into one thing,
Yep.
That's all. All right, let's move on then to just the recap portion, weekly manga recap. We have a lot of chapters to discuss this week, so let's just get into it. My Hero Academia, chapter 250, continuing the storyline that everyone loves, Endeavor's family troubles. This is going to resolve in a way that everyone likes, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So, there was the odd moment where Natsu had left, right, in the last chapter. He stormed out of dinner. And then Bakugo spotted him after they were cleaning up dinner outside. Well, it turns out he left again after that.
Well, that was him heading out. He was done eavesdropping on the conversation.
I guess leaving. I guess he didn't leave the building in the last chapter, but now he is. But as he does so, and we get our chapter title ending, we see narration from someone who is wearing a striped black and white outfit, like they're wearing a prison uniform, and the person narrating says, "My first impression of you was that you were a fierce solar flare. Do you remember, Endeavor? I was full of despair, and you just captured a thief named Takami when I saw you. Ever since that day, I aspire to be all that you are. But 7 years ago, I lost it, and you caught me. The only choice we all enjoy equally is how to close the curtain on our lives, and when I was finally released, what do you think was the first thing I did? Before even eating a meal, I did some research on you." And we see the guy looming around the corner as Natsu comes outside and gets on his phone. I guess he's getting an Uber. It was a very humanizing thing in the world of My Hero Academia. He's just a guy who's like, I left earlier than I planned to. I guess I better just wait around awkwardly for my ride share to get here.
I would have loved it if, because he's just like, before I even had a meal, I did research on you. It's like him at the public library. The guy walks by like, free steaks, free filet mignons. And it's him like, come on, load faster, Facebook. I'm so hungry.
He's just like waiting for like Encarta 97 or something like that to pull up. Why haven't they updated this stuff?
Loaded baked potato
in the library.
Loaded baked potato bar disappearing in 13 seconds.
Update your technology instead of your buffet lines. So we cut back over to Fuyumi's place. We're having a conversation. Just all of the people except Endeavor who are still there. And so she tells them about how Natsuyu and Toya had a close relationship. But shortly after Mom went away, her condition somehow got even worse to the point that Shoto couldn't even visit her. Mentions that as well. And this is the awkward part of this chapter. So I was actually having a conversation with some of the guys in our Discord server. Join that. And we all agreed, don't like this. See, Fuyumi says that, Mom's condition got even worse. Shoto wasn't allowed to visit her, but she's overcome all that. And Shoto's visiting her now. And our family is looking toward the future more and more. Only Natsu can't seem to let go. He believes that father killed Toya. So that's the problem, Chris. If only Toya would let bygones be bygones, they could all be one big happy family together. I want to repeat the sentiment I shared with everyone last week. If someone wrongs you horribly, even if they apologize and try to make amends, you do not owe them forgiveness. And it is really messed up of Fuyumi to try and say, like, oh, it's Natsu's fault now that we can't be a happy family together because now everyone's trying. So, Endeavor was the one who broke it. It's not Natsu's fault if things aren't coming back together. It's really gross to have that attitude, and it is why abuse sometimes is allowed to flourish, is because of peer pressure from other people to not rock the boat and make sure that the guilty parties, the actual guilty parties, receive their justice. So it's bad. Endeavor leaves with his students, so to speak, in tow. I do like how Deku is very, bows deeply and is really grateful to Fuyumi for letting them eat together. And Baku's like, give me the Mapo tofu recipe so that he can enjoy the Mapo tofu without ever having.
I was going to say, I hope it's like follow-ups. Like, so some of us can eat it in peace when they decide to have it.
Every time he makes the Mapo tofu, all of the Todorokis show up at his door. No!
Get out of here!
Go away! I just start having family drama. No!
They're like, Fuyumi, did you leave the toilet seat up the other day? And she's like, I don't even know how that would practically lead to a conversation.
Why would I do that?
But here we go. Big family drama.
It's all your fault, Natsu. But Endeavor parts while saying, hey, Fuyumi, thanks. And Fuyumi also takes Deku's hand and says, hey, thank you for being Shoto's friend. So that's nice. Bakugo's just like, let's go. They all drive off. We get to meet Endeavor's personal driver, who has a weird mustache and hairstyle. But he's very enthusiastic.
Is always screaming, it seems.
Always screaming.
His default expression is mouth open, teeth bared, white knuckling the steering wheel, eyes bulging.
He's got both hands on it.
Like, my dude's in a fucking place. Like, I hope that's his quirk, and he's got everything together.
And he doesn't like Bakugo's attitude because Bakugo's complaining about how the car is really small. I guess he feels really uncomfortable because he's sticking his head out of the window like a dog while complaining about it. And the driver is like, why are you complaining about being chauffeured around? Endeavor, why are you letting slackers ride around with you? And Endeavor's like, well, I'm doing it because, I'm at the top now and I've got responsibilities. And the driver's like, "Pa!" And literally everyone just goes, what does pa mean?
Oh, no, he was having a small stroke, everybody. Like, oh, okay.
So what you don't see is him actually just going, pa!
And he's straight off the side of the road. Everything else that happens in My Hero is a dog stream. All the main characters died back in chapter 250.
But they spot a figure in the middle of the road. Oh my gosh, it's the guy in the striped prison shirt, kind of, who has captured Natsumi. Natsu, just Natsumi's a girl's name. Natsu, he's captured Natsu Dragneel. And he's got him all wound up in like what looks like bandages. And so the driver swerves around the guy, and Endeavor flies out of the seat, demands that Natsu be released. And the guy in the prison sort of outfit says, oh, do you remember me? And Endeavor does indeed remember him. And he's like, yes, I'm tickled pink that you remember me. That's right, I'm ending. Okay.
I get it.
And so he says, you have to understand, no matter what I did, you always had so much that I could never attain. And I looked up to you, but I never had anything to protect. I'm going to kill this kid. So do the job right this time. You gotta kill me. So this guy's a little bit crazy. Mm-hmm. Even if he were saying all of these points, if he had like a calm expression on his face, I'd be like, okay, well maybe this guy's just got a lot of conviction. But he's got like blood vessels popping in his eyes. Not a single pose he strikes can be considered casual or normal. And he's drooling. So clearly he is disturbed. How did he get out of prison so quickly? He says he was released. But maybe he's just really good at faking it. But I don't know if I buy that.
I was going to say, I hope that his parole interview was him looking exactly like this, except he clearly had like a pin-on tie, and it was just them like, "What's the first thing you think you're going to do when you get it?" He's like, "Well, before I eat anything, I'm going to find out about the Todoroki family."
And then I'm going to find out what Endeavor's weakness is and take advantage of it so that I can force him to kill me.
All right. Well, nothing he said there sounded like a crime. Like, what about the kidnapping and the forcing to murder thing? There's no rule there's no law in the rule book that
right from Air Bud.
It says you can't make a superhero kill yourself to prove a point. So, play ball.
So this is odd. I'm not really sure where this is going exactly. I know it's an excuse for Endeavor to potentially save Natsu. If that is the case, I hope that he does it. And then Natsu's like, this doesn't change anything. You still messed up our family. Yeah. But I guess we'll see where it goes. This really came out of nowhere, and I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, this is an odd chapter, and it's especially odd if the start of the next chapter isn't just Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki just fucking wasting this guy. Because it's odd when you create the premise of this entire arc is like, you gotta be faster than me, and the first thing Endeavor does when he gets into a fight is stop and listen to the villain. You're like, alright.
Chapter 251 opens up with the guy tied up and Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki's over kicking
I was like, I mean, it feels like I understand the notion, like, he has a hostage, he can't attack him, but it feels weird when that's been, like, the gimmick to this arc is, like, you gotta be faster than me. That's the only way I'll prove you over the summer and everything like that. Like, that's your mission. And the first thing Endeavor does when he encounters, like, a villain in this situation is he's like, all right, I'll hear what you have to say.
Well, maybe you can be reasoned with.
He's like, all right, lay it on me.
All right, I can tell by the saliva that is fluttering out of your mouth that you're a man who can listen to logic and sound arguments.
I want to hear what's in your head. I want to see where you're coming from.
They're all just like, Endeavor, you've got to save your son. Hold on.
No. That's not the way we make progress in this country. Sometimes you listen to them.
You literally fly around on jets of fire, punching evil in the face as soon as you spot it.
Yes, but what does he have to say? Oftentimes, it's the sickest in our communities who are ignored.
So let's not throw a milkshake on him. Let's listen to what he has to say. Not challenge.
All right, let's talk about Eden Zero, Nick. 2 chapters of Eden Zero.
Yes.
For some reason, starting with chapter 7.
It's because it's Masahiro Hero. Yeah. He's got to be like, I've got to do more.
Yeah, he finished up the first chapter here, and then he had like 2 days left in the week. He's like, I bet I can knock out another one. And that'll come up when I discuss these chapters.
Hero says that you had to do color page. Hero says you had to do color pages too. I know.
I like to think that he's the one X-Men and his power is just to vomit like manga at times. Like he's just like, it's just like fully fledged out page comes out and he's like, all right, cool. I got time for another one this week.
See, that's why there are so many boob and ass shots and all, and the fetish stuff is that he can't control actually what comes out when he does that. He's just kind of like, all right, well, there's a really, really sexy looking picture here, so I guess I better just turn it into a fetish shot.
Yes,
all right.
That's what's going to be, I guess. All right. So first chapter is chapter 70, Belly Old Goer. So we open with Rebecca being really upset because the boys and Homura
I'm going to dress angrily.
Left without her. So we get like a montage of the different electronic stuff she puts on as she gets closed on and is like, I'll fight too. And
I do like seeing like the little accessories getting put on. So we see a little bit of the tech, like, so she's got, the scrunchies and the sandal straps just kind of put themselves on. But of course, we've got to have a shot of her like, let me just slowly put this shirt over my boobs. And then, geez, there's a lot of boobs still coming out of there. But
it's also the fun of her, like the end point is her being like, I can fight too. And I'm like, obviously, by the effort that you just put on high heels and like a tube top, I can see you're clearly ready for combat right now. You've gotten your combat attire ready. So
she just leave without taking any guns or something like that.
Yeah, she's like, I forgot my guns. Silly me. So we arrive on this.
Just use your ether gear. Oh, I forgot to bring my feet.
Ah, jeez. Actually, with these high heels as tight as they are, it cuts off all the ether gear flow. They're like, just take the shoes off. She's like, what? Make my ass not look as good? You're not tricking me on this one, Satan. So the gang sneaks onto the burial goer, and Hermit is basically sort of like their point of contact in between. And they reveal that the ship is not just a ship, it is an entire city. In fact, it was basically as large as a sector. So it's a very impressively sized place. So consider this a planet, more or less.
It was basically part of a planet before, and now a part of it just floats, of that planet just floats around in space.
So they mentioned, like, hey, Dracojo's the highest authority. He's called the Dark Alchemist. He's the biggest big shot in the whole cosmos for the underworld. And Weiss asks, like, hey, these earrings can't be tracked, right? And they're like, no, they're made from lacrima, so no one will be able to overhear us. The gang goes about having fun. Everyone's doing their crazy stuff because this is like a sort of like a fun nightlife planet. So we see that Shiki is playing with punching bag machines. Weiss is in a big high-stakes poker game. Homura is getting hit on by weirdos. Everyone's in their element.
Poor Homura.
They go to a strip club for a moment.
Well, I mean, as soon as they come up to her, though, she'll be like, I will not tell them that I imagine all men who do this kind of behavior are compensating for having very tiny penises, as that would hurt their feelings, and then just immediately leave her alone.
That would be how one way of the situation going, but we don't see that, unfortunately. Instead, we have a strip club scene. They cut away, and everyone's kind of just like, "Wow, what a fun!"
At least when they show the pole dancers, it actually looks like impressive pole dancing. Because you know what? If you were just going to indulge in having a pole dancing scene in order to just like have a girl like leaning over or something like that, it'd be like, what a waste of an opportunity. Why even bother having a pole dancing scene? You could have drawn one of 200 other ways of having a girl throw her boobs out. Yeah. But you know what? It actually looks like impressive pole dancing. Mm-hmm. That's why they're impressed, I bet. It's not because they're perverts. Yep.
So
why is Homura pointing at a door?
Because they tell them we have to leave. It's an exit, I think.
Okay.
It's Pino and Homura saying like we're not getting anything from here. So they mentioned like, hey, we got to figure out why they're doing this. You know, we got to find somebody to help us out here. And someone recognizes Weiss, and we see who it is, and it is Sabir, the villain from the first arc of the series. But he's old. He's so old, even his tiny bird that rode on his shoulders is very old and like kind of has a beard as well.
He's dead.
It's a very long-lasting bird. So Pino is immediately afraid because this was the guy that tortured her and did all those very awful things. But this person's
I'm better now.
This person's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And to cut a long situation short, this is the Sabir from the version of Weiss, or the version of Norma that escaped the chronophage. Basically, he's sort of the opposite. He's the same as the Weiss that Rebecca originally met. So he's not the one that we met who did all the things to Pino and everything like that. This is the other Sabir. Same way the Weiss that's here is the other Weiss, but not the same timeline. It gets very confusing. So this
don't think about it much.
The Sabir basically says like, I'm really sorry this happened. Like, I'm sorry you're so scared of me, robot. I don't know what I did. I was a really awful person in my past life. He kind of says it a lot nicer where he's like, I caused a lot of trouble for people in my past life. And I guess that one didn't also run like a super evil gang that tortured robots and shit like that. But, you know, whatever, different timelines. So that's the whole gist, is everyone's like, oh, okay. So even though you don't know this robot, you can still feel empathy for the fact that a version of yourself did do all these awful things. And you do seem legitimately regretful that this situation happened. So we also get a small hint that Weiss actually has some measure of respect for Sabir, that this Sabir actually kind of helped him out. So maybe there's more to that story as well. Sabir reveals that he works at a bar. He's like, hey, come in whenever you need it. I'll be able to help you guys out. It seems like this might actually pay off in some way. But before we can get that, Draken Joe appears on a big hologram. He's like, did you think I wouldn't find you, you little rats from Eden Zero? And
I have spies all over the strip club.
Every breast is a camera. Shit, I was staring right at those too. I know. You're a weird pervert.
If only
Hey.
you were instead an ass man, I would have never spotted you.
That's where you can only get sound from an ass. No audio visual. Hermit's like, what the fuck? I hacked the surveillance system, and then the ship rattles, so they're kind of knocked away as this video message plays. So everyone else on Burial Go or whatever is just like, who the fuck would fuck with Drac and Joe? What a big dumb idiot. But our hero's like, holy shit, what's happening? Oh my god. And we basically find out that they've cut off communication between the ship crew and the on-foot crew. And all of Drac and Joe's men have invaded the Eden Zero while they're basically left defenseless. It's just Rebecca on board at this point. And that's how the chapter ends, where you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? The rest of the team isn't there. It felt somewhat...
And it's these guys. Yeah, these guys who we've seen, just how intimidating and scary and ruthless they are when we've, met Drac and Joe's crew before.
Mm-hmm. So I thought this was a really great chapter. I thought this was a good way to bring that whole, like, time universe thing back into it. I thought it was really cool to bring Sabir back and to have this version seem legitimately regretful about what his alternate or alternate timeline version of himself did, and just kind of fleshed out this world a little bit more and created like some really dramatic stakes for the next chapter. And as I was reading, I was like, okay, the one person we kind of didn't see doing anything was the captain. So I wonder if he'll play some role in how the group manages to get out of this. Let's find out, Nick, as we discuss chapter 71, the Steel Sorceress. So the group has, Drac and Joe's people have invaded the ship. Witch is trying to ask for permission to unlock Battle Dress. She's trying to contact Homura because they need all of the 4 shining stars, I guess, to get permission for this. There's a bunch of drama. Drac and Joe's basically saying, hey, don't try to get back to your ship because the lives of everyone in your crew kind of depends on you guys. I've taken them hostage, and I'm going to kill them if you make a scene. And we see the group aboard the ship who are like, hostage? I thought we were just supposed to kill them. And I forget what her name was, but the stretcher goes like, yeah, we are. We're just going to tell them that we're going to take them as hostages, which is like how evil it seems.
Like the little fold there that because Shiki's group has no idea what's going on there, they can just claim that this is what happened. So
the Eden Zero's self-defense systems turn on. I think his name was... No, I guess it's Drac and Joe. I feel like we heard the skeleton guy's name, but I guess it doesn't matter. He shoots down everything. Some tendrils come out. The big Frankenstein-looking guy kind of just snaps them, just breaks them easily. And nothing's stopping them. All the automated defenses are just being stopped. And eventually, Witch shows up. And she's like, all right, I'll stop you guys. So the skeleton guy shoots some bullets at her. She blocks them. And then she equips her battle dress, Assault Witch online. And the big Frankenstein guy shoots...
It's a skippier piece of clothing.
Yeah, I was like, I don't... Honestly, her design is so unremarkable to me that I was like, I guess it's different? I really can't tell. The big robot guy tries to shoot something at her. She, like, makes a move and it sort of freezes him solid, says ice ether. And the stretchy girl is like, oh, Witch, I get it. And makes a whole joke. She's like, there's a demon king, a witch. What's next? You have a princess on board? And Moscow grabs his face and blushes as Sister says, don't you dare think about it. And I was like, what an odd time for a joke. As everything seems to be going bad for you guys, for there to be a weird moment where Sister yells at Moscow. Now, the weirdest moment probably of this chapter so far is as Rebecca looks on, she's like, that power Witch is using, is that magic? And they're like, no, it's ether. It just acts like magic. And I was like, but in your world, ether is magic. I was like, I don't understand. Like, they make a big deal that they're like, Witch has all these powers that she basically is like a magician. But it's not magic, it's ether. I was like, what the fuck's the difference?
Look, she's a witch. Shut up.
So, like, she can do all these different kinds of ether, and we see that as she changes elements. So she gets, air ether and moves really fast, and then she uses lightning ether to shock everybody, and She changes
And
her.
then she uses her, and then she takes her paintbrush, and then she uses a different type of magic.
I was just like, it feels weird that you tried to like explain these as something different, but whatever. Her nickname is the Steel Sorceress, and it looks like she's defeated all of Drac and Joe's people, which is kind of surprising. These were the 3 characters that have been kind of set up as his like antagonist group. We've been seeing them for quite some time. So surely these are fakes, or these are illusions, or they're just going to get back up and this really wasn't actually an effective attack. Oh, wait, no.
Nope.
It seems as though they've been defeated. But Dracojo says, well, if that's it, then I'll just have to send in my special forces, the Element 4. To which point
the true Horatio says.
To which point I audibly shouted, fuck you, at the computer screen. I was like, this group sucked the first time you did them. Stop trying to make groups.
Like, he didn't even, like, have a thing where it seemed like defeating the first 3 guys was even an accomplishment, because it happened so easily. So why even bother going to the extension or whatever? Just, it's so lame, and it's such a very stereotypical hero thing to do for him to pull this off. Like, this is the really scary villain group. Just...
It's not a.
He could have sent someone else.
It's not as though like you were like, wow, this first group kind of seems underwhelming and lame. Like everything we've seen them do seems super cool and awesome. So I don't know why it was abruptly like, all right, we'll get rid of them, and this group of the Elemental 4, which again he did in Fairy Tail, and that group sucked too. So I don't know. This is a very strange reveal. Only the dude in the back kind of looks like he has any interesting design here, but we'll see what happens. This was like a real like tale of 2 chapters, where after the first was like, fuck yeah, every so often Hiro could surprise me with the quality of his writing, and the second chapter is like, nah, you know what, he does pretty predictable shit, I guess.
It's disappointing. All right, let's talk about Spy Family. Actual proper Spy Family chapter 2.
Are we at Boruto?
Mission. We're gonna do that after this one. Mission 16. So Lloyd is looking over Anya's grades. She's doing real bad, like single digits in her grade on her papers bad. So he tries to get her attention, and she's watching her spy TV show. And I love that he's like, "Hey Anya," and she's just be like, "Busy cartoons." She's like a foot from the TV. And I think the idea is that she knows what's going on, and she's trying to get out of doing anything, because she doesn't look happy while she's watching the TV either. So Lloyd forces her to study because she's doing really bad in school, and so he's thinking about the mission and how she's got to get into the Imperial Scholar Honor Society, in order to do that, she's got to get Stella Stars, and the easiest way to do that is through exceptional academic performance, but she's just not very good at that. So, Yor points out, Anya's math score isn't that bad. And so Lloyd thinks to himself, is this because actually of the cartoons she's been watching? And apparently she's been actually picking up some terms from her spy show, because she says 2/8 of ammunition. So apparently spies use math. Good to know. So she blames not herself for her bad grade, but for the fact that the kid whose mind she was reading and copying off of was also bad. So she's like, from now on, I've got to figure out which of my classmates is good at which subject. And that way, when I cheat, I'll ace the test every time. She's like got this evil expression like she's fucking Light Yagami or something. I'm going to cheat. And Lloyd thinks to himself that, hey, I could just, hack into the computer system and change her grades to A+, but I'd probably, it's going to be a little bit too suspicious, so I need to make it as though she's actually improving. Plus, unearned plaudits could engender resentment from her classmates, leading to social problems at school. So Anya's like, all right, so if I ace the test through mind reading, then that means my classmates could help me too. So I guess I can't just get through this the easy way. So Lloyd sees that Anya is struggling with her homework, and he's like, all right, well, there are other ways to earn Stella stars. You don't necessarily need to be just good at just the academic subject. So we could try doing some other stuff. Like she could succeed in visual arts. It turns out she's really bad at drawing because she tries to draw a cow and it's got spots and 4 legs.
It's close enough. It's better than I would.
And then he's like, all right, let's try out music. Let's try sports. Just an uncoordinated little kid. So, Lloyd's trying to think to himself, like, it's okay. She's only in 1st grade. She can improve. She needs to pay more attention and discover what she excels in. He's just saying, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But, he's like, it takes a long time to plan a war, so I've still got time to do this. But then he also thinks that one of his contacts had said that the goal was to acquire the 8 Stella within just 4 months. So he's not really sure if he can actually just wait for her to develop like this. But Anya actually looks up after she trips over a jump rope and says that she's going to work really hard. So he has another idea, because you can also earn Stellas one other way, which is community service. So he takes her into a hospital to help out and volunteer around the place. Unfortunately, Anya is a little klutz. So every time that she tries to help with stuff, she's breaking stuff. They take her into the library to tell you stuff up there, and she just goes over to the manga section and starts reading. So like, maybe we could try doing something instead. She says she wants to be a nurse and hand stuff to surgeons instead. Very cute, but it would probably end very badly. So eventually the nurses there just get fed up with her. And so they're like, you're excused from service. So she apologizes to her on their way out. As they're walking down the hall, they happen to pass by a boy who is walking on with a crutch. He's hobbling along, and he's on his way to physical therapy, and he heads into the rehabilitation pool with his mother. And so as he makes his way around there, and she leaves him there, he checks the temperature of the pool water with his hand, and he ends up slipping and falling in. And his mom, or I'm not sure if it's his mom, it's probably actually a worker at the hospital, I should say, has taken her eyes off of him, and now she doesn't know where he is. And he's not making a whole lot of noise as he's now sinking into the pool, drowning. But Anya can hear him mentally crying out for help, and so she looks around and realizes what's happening, and she's like, "We've got to go." But she thinks to herself, if she just says, somebody's drowning in the pool, then how would she know that? So, but she keeps on hearing the guy's voice in her head, and so she was like, "I'm gonna get a Stella from swimming," and so she rushes off to the pool, saying she's going to practice swimming in it. And she just goes screaming down the hallway, ends up arriving in the pool, and she very awkwardly goes, "The pool looks so fun!" Heads over to where the boy is drowning, rushes over, dives into the pool, and tries to swim after him. But she is, a 6-7-year-old kid. Not going to work out too well. She manages to reach down towards him, but she's like, I can't get him. But fortunately, Lloyd caught up to her, and he grabs her, and he grabs the kid and hauls them both up out of the water, gets them onto the deck safely, and they've saved the boy's life. And he, makes a note of like, when children drown, they barely make any noise. So even adults often fail to do anything. So just be careful with them. And everyone's like, we're lucky you saw him, Anya. And Anya's like, I saw the air bubbles. So it covers that. And everyone's like, you're a hero. And Anya earns a Stella from this because she saved the boy's life. So there you go. And everyone congratulates her. We see that actually at the ceremony, the boy and his parents showed up, and he waves over to her, and she waves back. Yor gives her a big hug and congratulates her. Don't hug her too powerfully. You are a hitman, obviously. And Lloyd thinks to himself, it's strange. I can't help but think of the time I foiled that terrorist attack. I feel that same pride today. And he smiles down at Anya. And Anya realizes that she can actually use her ability to read minds to help people. And she feels really happy because everyone's proud of her, and also she has discovered this about herself. And that's the end of the chapter. There's a last little joke that they're going to make her something special to celebrate, and Anya's like, "I'd like Papa to cook instead of Mom because yours no good at cooking." So this is a very sweet chapter. There were some funny bits, but also good for Anya. It was really nice.
Absolutely.
Now let's do Boruto, Chris. So all of the kids have gone over to the wherever it is in the desert where Naruto is being held captive. We do have a little bit of catch up on the other end where they left from because Shikamaru has gotten word about Sasuke because he's like, well, we need Sasuke to use his space-time jutsu in order to go after them. And they're like, we found Sasuke. Great. He's been horribly injured. How? So that's not going to help.
We found Sasuke. Well, that's good. He is just in fucking shattered pieces. Like, that's bad. But he'll get better. That's good. But the kids are off in some unknown dimension where we don't know where they are. They might be dead by the time he wakes up. That's bad.
That's bad. Stop giving me alternating good and bad news. So we come over to where Boruto and Sarada and Kawaki and Nitsuki are. And they come across where the freaking bowl prison thing that Naruto is stuck in is, and where the big guy is guarding it. And they're like, Kawaki's like, oh, this is bad because this guy is guarding it. They fight because, of course, they do. He tells them that the only way to get Naruto out of it is using Jigen's jutsu. None of them are going to be able to break it open without potentially harming Naruto. He fights by using this strange poisonous black mist. That's about all you need to know, really. They do a bunch of attacks on him, but the more they stick around him, even when they are getting some hits on him, he regenerates really, really quickly. So Kawaki and Naruto get the really not Naruto. Kawaki and Boruto get the really bright idea of let's just hit him really hard so he can't recover. But his mist is poisoning them and deteriorating them too quickly for them to be able to do that. Mitsuki manages to do some clever stuff with lightning jutsu and using his snake arms and stuff. But I like how he uses his snake arms and grabs the guy, and the guy's just like, all right, and just uses the arms to suplex Mitsuki. Good job. And eventually Sarada breaks things up by throwing a rock at the guy and be like, let's go, and just grabs everyone and makes a tactical retreat. Boruto and everyone are upset that they're abandoning Naruto, and she's like, okay, look, we can't just charge in at this guy and beat him. We've actually got to come up with a proper strategy and take him down, and we've got to utilize the resources we have and actually work together instead of us charging in one at a time like idiots. And that's basically the chapter. She straps her headband on. It's time to get serious. It's the powered up Cell 7 along with Kawaki. So that's about it. Setting up that this guy is strong and they're going to need to work really hard in order to beat him. That's really what the point of the chapter is.
Super good chapter. I really enjoyed it. Makes the villain actually look competent when you see he has different levels of tactics that he's incorporating here. And we still see the heroes do something, but obviously by the end of it, you're like, oh yeah, you have to be fucking ninjas in the world of Naruto. You actually have to work together to beat strong opponents like this. So looking forward to it.
Mission Yozakura Family. This is getting back into the character focus kind of chapters. This one is focusing on the brother who disguises himself, and we learn a lot about his character in this. He takes Tayo along on a mission where they're both in disguise and they're infiltrating a crime family. But it turns out that their cover is blown eventually because the boss of this group is aware that the person that Kengo, the brother, is disguising himself as, because he's disguised as this woman who was the boss's lover, and they were under the impression that she was away, but it turns out she's dead. And they know this because the boss killed her, supposedly. So Kengo is off on his own, while meanwhile Tayo is in disguise as her bodyguard, being made to sing karaoke with everybody, because he's a very popular guy within the group. And Kengo's cover is blown. The guy's like, I know because I shot her. But Kengo knows that this is actually a lie as well because the woman actually killed herself. She was basically sent by the government as an undercover agent, but she ended up actually, falling in love with the guy and getting along with everybody. So she basically took her own life instead of betraying them. So Kengo reveals all this to the guy, and his impression is so spot on that the guy is actually appreciative of what he has done because it allowed her to basically speak with the woman he loved one last time. They end up bringing the group down. A bunch of people get arrested as a result. And the main thing that happens from everything is that Kengo basically says, like, the thing that I do is I don't work for money. I don't work for, justice or anything like that. I just take on the missions that, I think will be fun. But he left this, gift for this guy, did this guy a favor, and that was why he was successful in the mission. So maybe there's a little bit more to it than that. So he does what he's interested in. It's one of those kind of characters. The chapter ends on a joke that before Kengo had used his disguise ability to disguise himself as Mutsumi and used that to mess with Kyoichiro by being really, really mean to him while in disguise. So Kyoichiro was like, you're not like her at all, but it was clearly having an effect on him. So Taiyo tries to do the same thing, and it doesn't work. So Kyoichiro's threatening to kill him. That's the joke that it ends on. It was an interesting chapter, but that's about all I have to say about it. I'm not really sure how I feel about this.
I hated this chapter. I get annoyed when a story tries to fuck with you in a way where you're like...
There were multiple twists in a very short period of time.
I was like, did Vince Russo write this chapter? Because you keep swerving.
And Danny's another swerve.
Yeah, it's like, and then it's like, my dude, you made this all up, and like every beat of this fucking plot has been the last 3 pages. It's not like there's a story to be invested in here.
And she calls him daddy.
It's like, oh, all right, man. I don't know. This one felt like it was deliberately just trying to piss me as a reader off, where it's just like, oh, you thought you know how this story was going, but it's completely different. I was like, we just fucking walked into this. This wasn't like a 7 fucking week adventure where you got me at the end of it, my dude.
I feel as though this idea for a story could have actually been much more satisfying if it had been a proper, like, miniature story arc, the stuff that we got with Hanawa as the villain. But this was instead just like, this is Kengo's character. Get used to it.
Or if it didn't have like the moment where he catches her looking at the computer, but no, she's just looking at family photos, and he's like, but that's where I killed you. But actually, she didn't get killed by him. She killed herself, and she's a spy. You're like, all these levels of like drama and twists that they incorporate on each other to just get the point across that like Kengo fucking does work that he's interested in, like he's an altruistic person. He does what's interesting to him. Like that was the point you needed to get across. And it's like 4 straight pages of twists and turns. That doesn't mean anything because we're never going to see this character again.
Possibly.
Like Rebecca, Nick, he's never going to be an important character.
He just shows up and eventually he's got like a sign pointing to him.
Crap.
Samurai 8.
Now, before we start, Nick, I need to check something. Did I forget in the end of last week, fucking Daruma and Ben shot up into space for a giant samurai duel?
That took me by surprise too. So maybe it was something that just kind of like was established in a small panel and we weren't paying attention to it. I don't know. Because I definitely did not recall that happening. I was like, why are they just like hanging out, talking with this guy over what just happened? Like, did Ben get defeated? No, he's up in space with Daruma.
They're having a big space duel, and I was like, I don't remember that happening.
I'm sure that it probably did happen. We just overlooked it. So, they're having this conversation about this, and they're like, why did you, work with that guy? And he's like, he used to be a subordinate of my father's, and after my father died, he became my guardian, my teacher. Well, that guy's your samurai master? No, not a samurai teacher, a money-making teacher. Hey, Hashimaru, what is that cat to you? Well, he's my samurai master. He's trying to make me a proper samurai. And anyway, the long, long speech about how I do appreciate Dharma, despite the fact we don't always get along. And then he was like, well, the cat's been keeping a keen eye on me the whole time. He didn't sleep at all. And let me warn you, Ben's very powerful. And they shoot up into the sky, and oh, Ben is very powerful. See, he doesn't have a very powerful soul. So what he's done is he has stolen a bunch of things from people. He has stolen their key holders, and he has like really, really weirdly attached them onto his own body, which I guess you can also do. Why not?
That's just how mechanics work in this series.
Yeah, you just slap it on there. Yeah, that's my arm now. So Dharma's like, the truth is that you are a coward and a weakling, just as I thought. But Ben's like, well, you used your apprentice to come here and win a money prize, didn't you? How are you any different from me? And Dharma's like, well, I guess you're kind of half correct, which is shameful for me. But my connection to the boy is not through some inorganic cable. Troublesome as it may be, it is a connection invisible to the eye. Okay, so the planet behind him opens up because that's no moon. It's a really big key holder, and he like docks with it, and it's really huge. And there's like even a little helpful diagram that says like this spot is Dharma, and he's really small in comparison. And they keep fighting, and Dharma's body gets cut in half, and his HUD voiceover thing goes, accumulated damage 40%. In 1 minute, we'll enter sleep mode. And they're like, he's gonna die now. He's going to fall asleep. So Dharma's like, hey, Ben, Kotsuka's down there. And Ben's like, anyone who cannot strike down his companions only binds himself. It means you are weak. And Dharma has a flashback to his master saying, you are too strong. That is why the Ususama style was so persistent. Sorry. just like saying some of this stuff out loud.
You're like, it's because of the Ususama style that we've locked you inside your cat body, you samurai ninja robot.
They stole your evil biter, caused your disciple to betray you, and led to the death of Princess Baku. They set a trap for you and locked you in that cat body. Well, when you say it all at once like that, it sounds ridiculous.
Oh, now I get it.
It's not just that all of this stuff is weird. It is just the blunt, I am explaining what you already know way of expositing this. So his master says, yes, you owe, because Dharma's obviously very upset about all of this. He's like, you are cursing and your emotions are raging. You have reverted to when we first met, and a samurai must be composed. A Jedi must not give in to anger or fear. And Dharma's like, well, after all that's happened, I can't possibly be calmed. And his master says, well, I'm disappointed in you. It is though you are howling about your own weakness. If a samurai's calling were easy to carry out, there would be no need for it to be a calling at all. The initiation process is complete. Perhaps it is also time for you to gain the ultimate secret, the mind's eye. See, we need to explain another samurai power. I will give you a little piece of my samurai soul. When your body is damaged... Okay, I'm just going to read off. I've been reading this off, but it's very important that I read off exactly how this happens. Because she's explaining this in the flashback as we see Dharma pulling out the little piece of the samurai soul in the present. And so the explanation continues. When your body is damaged with this soul, the real you will awaken. My code will be inserted into the body in which you are locked and cause it to be bugged for roughly 10 minutes. That wound will never heal. Also, it has the risk of side effects that will immobilize you for a long time. And Dharma drops his bone handle. So this can only be used when you have a trustworthy disciple to help you. Even the overpowered lone wolf is not perfect. Find yourself a new student, and this time make your lessons long and comprehensive. That is the trick to forming a stronger connection. And Hachimaru is flying back up into the atmosphere, and he catches Dharma's bone handle, and he throws it back to Dharma. And Dharma inserts it into his paw, and he reverts to his human form. He's like, at last, I feel like I just woke up. So It's a good thing that we got that whole explanation of exactly how this power works right when Dharma needed to use it.
I have to assume this would have been a super cool moment if the series had been able to naturally bring up that Daruma's power is kind of locked behind this gate where he requires somebody else's help to unlock it, and that it was kind of this thing between him and Hachimaru that eventually Hachimaru is able to give it to him, and it's this big cool moment where he reveals his power, and not just like the
Sensei, you dropped this, here you go.
yeah, not just like the tail end of this like fucking 18-page straight fucking exposition dump.
I'm sick of having to give all of the reviews of Samurai 8 chapters the caveat of, well, if it had played out normally, because it's not playing out normally. This is what we've got, and we've just got to like deal with it and accept it for the way it is, which is not good.
No.
So that's, yeah, it's rushed and it's blunt and it's weird and it's awkward.
Very much so. Speaking of rushed, guys, let's move on to We Never Learned. Question 136. From slumber, they awaken to a pizza bet. And I say...
That sounds like a great wake up.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And I say rush because we're going to go through this one super quick because we have very little time. And this chapter honestly doesn't actually have a whole lot to it. It's significant, but it's pretty simple. Femino is on her way to school. She overhears some of her friends talking about the crushes they have and the different things that sort of happen when you have a crush on somebody. And she starts seeing Yueka and realizes, oh, hey, all the things they said, I'm feeling too. She sees the other two girls asking Yueka for study help. She sees that. She starts to get a little jealous. She denies it. She's like, nope, I definitely don't. There's a whole thing about whether or not the other two girls are like, hey, you should pursue your thing. She's like, no, I absolutely won't. It was about pudding. She has a moment outside with Yuega where they both kind of reminisce of the different thing, like the different situations they've gotten into. And eventually she comes to ask, like, hey, that one night at the festival, why did you hold my hand? And he's like, well, it's because I used to dream about my dad and cry a lot too. And I know how it feels. And, you know, I just wanted to make you feel better, if only for a tiny little bit. And he has sort of this moment. It's raining. And underneath all that, Femino kind of whispers, I love you. And Yuega's like, huh? What did you say? And she's like, oh, nope, don't worry about it. Let's go back inside. So they go back inside. But as they're walking, she realizes this entire time she's been denying it to herself. She actually loves him. She's finally admitted it to herself, and now she's kind of got to deal with these feelings.
I like the sequence at the end of the chapter where Firmino was thinking to herself, when did I actually start feeling this way? And she remembers some of the moments they spent together, and she's like, what is it back then? Was it back then that I started feeling this way? And she's actually like apologizing for the way that she has handled this and the way she's handling it now even. And she's walking behind Yuiga very deliberately so he can't see her crying because of how she feels and how she's been denying it. And also just the general situation she's in with their friends. So it's a really big moment. And it really is nice to see her have this and see her take this step forward and actually, you know, admitting to herself that this is how she feels. So.
Yeah. Don't take the abridging to be any comment on the actual quality. This was a very good chapter for the most part, and it's a very significant one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yes, I did as well. Dr. Stone, Z equals 130. Devil's Choice. Look at how fucking... People keep talking... The idea with, like, Yoga was that, like, oh, he's thin, he's skinny. Look at how fucking ripped he is on this cover page.
He's pretty jacked.
He has muscles in places I did not know muscles were.
Yeah.
So everyone's really nervous because they absolutely need Hyoga's help in order to defeat Mose, and they're not sure what he's going to do. However, Ibarra has a revelation in this moment because he, you know, spots... that he sees Hyoga and he's like, Hyoga, that guy was a statue moments ago. And then he spots Ryusui and he's like, that guy with the hat, that's the guy whose arm I broke off before. And he realizes immediately that this group has the ability to revive petrified people. And so he just books it. He goes off like Sonic the Hedgehog, zooming through people because he has to head back to where the old chief's statue is being kept because he's like, I shattered it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't bring him back to life. I have to make sure that they don't take that trump card and use it against me. Magma tries to stop Yubara as he rushes off, but Moe's just like back elbows him and knocks him away immediately. So Hyoga now has a demonstration of exactly how powerful Mose is. And Mose quickly realizes what the situation is, why he's been revived, and what the choice is that he has to make, because he has the power to save the Kingdom of Science or destroy it and join Mose. And that discussion rests purely with him. We also get clarification from the narrator saying that, hey, Yubara's got doesn't have to worry about the statue being revived because too much of it is missing, but this cautiousness was the right move for him because, of course, the statue poses a threat even if it can't be revived properly, as it has been fully assembled now to the way it was before he completely broke it. Back with the group with Senku and Hyoga and everybody like that, Gen is panicking because he's like, I've got to find a way to convince Hyoga to fight Mose. Maybe if I just make Mose think that he's going to be our ally and force him to attack first, then we can do it. And so he's like, Nikki, pretend to be in love with Hyoga. It's just like the first idea I think that comes to his head. And she's like, well, I mean, I guess I could do that, but she's really super awkward about it because she's so pure at heart that she can't really bring herself to do it easily. I love all the expressions that Nikki pulls in these few pages that highlight her. But Hyoga sees that Gen is trying to pull something, and he already hates Gen anyway, so he just grabs him by the cloak and is like, shut the fuck up! Don't do anything! But there's a lot of going back and forth that also goes on between Hyoga and Nikki in this chapter. I don't know if it was actually established that there was some sort of established like companionship or friendship or understanding between them at all. I don't think that was actually a part of either of their characters, because there's a lot of focus on Nikki in this chapter and the way that Hyoga is looking at her and viewing her. Because a big thing that he does is, he brings up, his plan that he did that he was going to enact with Tsukasa, enact a culling on the human race, only revive the people that, were going to pass on superior genetics. And Moses is like, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. We're already doing that on this island, because we only have the prettiest women chosen to be part of the harem. Hey, you could have a harem too, Hyoga. Would you like that? And Ryusui is like, that's childish thinking. Every woman is a beauty. So pure. And Mose does such a dick thing because he's like, oh, really? All beauties, huh? And he makes like a weird expression while he's looking at Nikki. And I'm like, how is Nikki supposed to be ugly? I know she's got kind of big lips and she's tall, but she's got like a supermodel's body, dude. Anyway, so Hyoga clarifies, like, so what you're saying is the men and women you find worthy are just the best looking ones. And Moses is just like, well, yeah, the women, sure. And that's all. So Hyoga's like, all right, I've been trying to decide who to side with, but now it's settled. And at that moment, as Ibara is making his way across the ship, fortunately, Kirisame has arrived. And he's like, hey, use the petrification, envelop the entire island. And after that, and he says something that we don't get to hear, but Kirisame reacts in shock when he says it. So his way, of course, of dealing with everyone, going after the statue is, we'll just stotify everyone over there, and I'll take care of it.
Not a bad plan.
A really great way of dealing with any issue that could occur. Hyoga rushes with his spear towards Senku, and everyone's like, oh no! And Senku just kind of moves slightly to the left. And the spear clashes with Moses' axe, and they immediately engage as Senku starts to move everyone out of the way so that they can fight. And Hyoga takes off his mask and is like, the truth is they've done well. They're my allies after all, as they continue fighting. So we don't really get an explanation for why he has chosen this path. There was some sort of implication that he didn't like Moses' reasoning on things, but I imagine that there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get clarification on when we get the next chapter, which unfortunately we have to wait a couple of weeks for because Dr. Stone is off this coming week.
I think the implication is meant to be that Mose doesn't seem to value women as anything other than just their looks, and Hyuga does seem to. So, because when he sees like Nikki, he mentions like, "Hey, she was ready to jump in at your weird, stupid scenario." Like, so she's someone who's capable. So I think that's the implication, is that he's like, okay, this guy doesn't seem to value other people, like especially women, except for anything other than looks. I think this, if that is how it, like what we're meant to take from this, I think this could have been executed a little bit better, because, I mean, even saying it, I was like, was Nikki showing a lot of competence when the first moment to improv, she was like, no, and basically. So it's sort of an odd moment there.
Well, she didn't really get a chance to act. She was like, her exact words were, "I'll say it if I have to, but I really don't want to." You know? But and Hyoga as well was just like, "Just shut up." And he's like, "Look, I'm not going to kill you, but shut up," because he's like, "I value your competence."
Yeah.
So, and I guess that could be it. And I don't think that things are going to just be left as they are if that is the reason. I feel as though we're going to get like a much more dramatic, like, you know, this is how I value people kind of thing. And it comes into conflict with Moses' way of looking at things.
Yeah.
We're
going to get a lot more.
This is an all right chapter, but in order to, I think, get a full appreciation for it, we need to have the thing that it leads into and have the two chapters working together. So, Chainsaw Man. Riz is still after Denji. So, he wakes up. Denji wakes up in this chapter, which is fortunate because as they try and drive away, she just lands on the fucking roof of the car, and just. There is a moment where I forget this guy's name. It's the plague doctor guy that we got introduced to, along with, you know, the angel devil and the shark devil and stuff like that. He lands a huge axe kick on her, which crunches the pavement under her feet and forces her a little bit into it, but otherwise she's unharmed. And she's like, "Oh no, I kicked you at full strength." And Reese is like, "Yeah, it was pretty good. Let's fight now." And he's like, "No."
Maybe the greatest moment this week is he's like, "We're out of here!" Like,
"Run! She's too strong!"
The big hero reinforcement shows up, gets a big attack in, then he's like, "Oh shit, she's not dead! Let's get out of here!" And the heroic reinforcements just leave.
"She's too strong, we're leaving." And I love that he even, like, because he doesn't just run away, he runs away and then pokes his head around the door as he's going to duck behind it. He's like, "Don't mind me, I'll just show myself out."
It's like a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon. Like, he's just like, "All right, don't mind me, I'll just be heading out." Woo! And he like disappears in the cloud of dust.
Kobeni is there. She was apparently going to help, but now the bomb devils turned all of her attention on her, and she's like, "Please don't kill me, no." But of course, Reese had established before, she doesn't really want to kill people if she can avoid it. And so Kobeni is just cowering away from her, so she doesn't bother killing her. So she just like is left on her hands and knees going, "Ah!" as Reese just heads off and chases after Denji.
It's so fucking funny that they were like, who's going to help the heroes in this moment? The violence devil shows up, immediately books it, and then the other character, who we know is crazy powerful, like it was revealed to us that she's got a crazy strong talent to her, is just sitting there begging for her worthless life, and the bomb devil's like, "All right, I'm out of here." And I hope we don't cut back to them. Like, that's just the end of that moment.
We don't see them until they show up in the next story arc or whatever.
It's fucking brilliant.
Reese ends up on a truck that is right behind the car that Denji and the others are driving in when he wakes up. There's a weird moment where Hayasaka like is messing with the police radio and he's like, "What's going on? The radio is busted." And it starts going, "Whoop, whoop, 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 whoop."
Turn off that damn Skrillex there, Angel Devil. Like, it's not me.
Hayasaka's like, "We can't give her Denji." But all of a sudden, oh, it turns out it's the that's the wub wub wub, because apparently chainsaws go wub 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 wub. Well, this is a different sound effect. Never mind. Yeah, this is a different sound effect. So I don't know why the radio was just going wub 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 before. Anyhow, he cuts through the roof. and comes out and he's going to attack Reese, and of course Saisaga's like, "You don't have enough fucking blood to do that." And Denji says, "Well, when I was in so much pain, I thought I'd die. In the back of my confused brain, I thought about things real hard, and I realized something. Everyone I meet tries to murder me." He's not wrong. It has happened with every single woman at least once. And he's like, "Well, because everyone wants my fucking chainsaw heart. What about my heart? What about Denji? What about Denji? What about Raven?"
I love that line. Everyone's after my chainsaw heart. But what about Denji's heart? It's such and he has a point, but it is just such a funny way of him having to state. He's like, "What about Denji's heart?" And he's a fucking chainsaw monster.
It's such a whiny teenager thing to say, too. And so Reese is like, "I mean, I do want that too. I do like you, Denji. I wasn't lying about that." And Denji's like, "Wait, for real?" And I was like, "She's the enemy. Don't listen to her." He's like, "All right, that was a close one."
Oh, shit, you almost got me. I'm wise to you now.
So Denji's like, "Oh yeah, well, I don't know why you want to kill me, but no, I've pledged myself to Makima." And Reese is like, "Oh, you're that witch's pet. Well, then even if you had run away with me, it would have been pointless. Oh well." And Denji's like, "Yeah, well, should have never kissed you either." Dork. So he jumps off of the car and onto the truck that Reese is on, and Reese is like, "Come here, Denji, I'll teach you how we do battle." And that's the end of the chapter. Fun chapter. I've really enjoyed all the stuff with Reese since she first showed up. So yeah.
Yep, super cool chapter. All right, let's talk about the 7 Deadly Sins, chapter 333, Arrogance, Overeating, and Scars. So, it's actually happening now. The 7 Deadly Sins were victorious. What's up?
Sad chapter.
Yeah. You got to actually deal with some real feelings then, because all the characters are kind of looking forward, and then you just hear Escanor say, "Well, you guys better go. Everyone's waiting." And all the characters don't want to turn back. They don't want to face the truth because they're saying, "Hey, don't say it's just us. You're coming too. You know, you can't just stay there forever." Leave memories alone. Eventually I look back and yeah, we see that Escanor is sort of breaking apart. He really has used too much energy. It's the end of the road for him. And he says, "Hey, I have no regrets. So thank you, everybody, for coming into my life." And he shares a little moment with everybody. He's like, "Hey, Galther, I enjoyed our talks. You know, Diana King, I'm sorry I won't be able to make the wedding, but I wish you both all the happiness in the world. Mail, thanks for taking care of us until the very end." You know, it has these sweet moments. And eventually he's like, "And Merlin, I've always loved you. And I know it's not only because you remind me so much of Rosa, it's because you never treated me different than anyone else." She's like, "Hey, you know what? You're giving me too much credit. How do you know I didn't just see you as an interesting specimen to study or something like that?" And Escanor shakes his head and he's like, "Even if that's all it was, I'm still happy. As long as it meant I got to take up even a little corner of your heart." And that's when you're like, "Oh." Little bit.
He's gonna die. He really is.
You can see usually the stone-faced emotionless Merlin, she kind of grips her own sleeve in anger. You can see she's having real reactions. So she's like, "You know what? It's too late for anything now. We can't turn back the clock. And you know what? I wish you had found me sooner. You know, 3,000 years sooner even." And Escanor says, "Hey, no matter what, I'm on your side. No matter what you decide to do or what kind of crimes you commit." And Merlin turns and she's like, "Wait a minute, you know?" And he says, "No, it's just a hunch. After all, since the day we've met, you've always had the saddest eyes." And his time is up now as his body is now actually breaking apart. And he says, "Take care, everyone. And this could be dangerous, so keep your distance." But Melodious like, "Hey, I'm gonna see you off, and all the sins are gonna stay around." But then Merlin walks straight forward towards him and gives him a big kiss as he's literally burning away and fading away. And she pulls away, and we can see that like the bottom part of her jaw, like every part of her that was actually touching contact with Escanor, is now burned and seared. And she says, I wasn't able to return your feelings. The least I could do was burn into my flesh proof that you existed. Proof of the only man to ever love me. And there's a big little sort of like prayer said at the very end as Escanor.
It's a poem kind of thing.
Yeah, his poetry that we remember he apparently did. And he turns to ash and fades away into the sky as I assume Melodious, but maybe it's Merlin, says, sleep well, Escanor.
Really good chapter. It's kind of a sudden turn, because this was, of course, established when he showed up in order to fight with the Demon King. But, you know, as we were saying over the past few weeks, it felt like this big victory lap for everyone. It's like everyone is like, oh, there's no way that they're going to lose this. They're going to kick this guy's ass and happily ever after. It's like, well, there is still, you know, a bitter note to it, that they did not pull back on the idea that Escanor was going to give the last of his life in order to help his friends when they needed him at the end, and he did that. And it was really nice to see this given like a proper like, hey, let's take some time and give the weight that this deserves.
Yeah.
And with a member of the Seven Deadly Sins now dead, it seems like we are actually going to wind down on this series now.
Yeah.
Unless it's going to be like, and now, taking his place at last, as he has long deserved in the Seven Deadly Sins, Hawk! Now the sin of pride.
This one of the more Gilda. I'm like, which one was she? I really enjoyed this chapter. I always enjoy like earnest sentiment, and I think this chapter had it in spades. You know, just seeing Escanor kind of give his goodbyes to everybody. The moment of him kind of saying like, you know, I love you, and her being like, I wish you had said this sooner. The kind of tease that maybe Merlin's planning to do something in the future too as well is a nice little touch. But obviously like the big kiss, and then even as she says like, hey, I don't return the same feelings to you, but I respect your feelings, and I'm going to
mean something. It means something to me that you feel that way for me.
I'm literally going to scar myself, presumably forever, as proof of what you were to me. So it's a very sweet sentiment.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Promised Neverland, chapter 158. The reason I was born. You see, we are both special, but I have never wanted to be arrogant enough to proclaim myself special. But I guess I am, maybe. That's about it. That's the difference between Mujika and Lagravalima, is that Lagravalima is like, I am super special. And Mujika is like, I mean, it's really arrogant to do that. And I've always wondered if I was special, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Also, you're starving, desperately hungry. And she's like, what are you talking about? Mujika says, you are starving. No matter how much you eat, obtain, or ascend, you are not satisfied. Poor thing, I feel sorry for you. What did you truly want? What are you afraid of? If you were able to feel pleased, you could have had a different future, but not realizing that led to your destruction. And Lagravino was like, greed is good, because it allows her to obtain more and more power. And I've been different from the moment I was born. There's nothing, I don't fear anything. You amuse me. And Mujika's like, Omae wa mo shinderu. And she even explodes when she says that.
She literally does, basically.
And so, you know, Sonju is standing in front of Mujika to defend her, but it's not necessary. As Lagravilima lunges forward, her body just explodes, and the heads that had formed her cocoon earlier, they're back again, and her body is descending into a bunch of faces that are all crying out in different voices. And Mujika says, you have overeaten, and your cells have already reached their limit. The second core doesn't have special powers after all. You ingested poison and large quantities of meat and cells all at once, and it was too much for your dying body that had lost its first core. The fact that you were able to retrieve what you ate as they were showed that you weren't able to digest them. And so all the people that she has eaten are now manifesting and kind of pulling her apart as she does so. And Lagravilima is actually crying out in pain as also she is feeling all of their memories all at once. It's kind of creepy and terrifying, but all right.
I need to address one thing that almost that kind of pulled me out of the moment though. On page 14, we see like the giant pillar of like faces. Up near the top right, it looks like a little dog in like a captain's hat. Like a Captain Crunch hat and it's smiling. I was like, I feel like this dude's really taking away from the scene. Like everything else is like this screaming monster, and then it's like this one clown dog. I was like,
You gotta set that as a profile pic.
I was like, it must be like an Easter egg to something, because I can't imagine why else it would be. Like this has to be like when the straw
Unless
hat
it's just
logo.
like a happy accident or something like that. Because like the mouth is like supposed to be a line around a demon mask's eye hole.
Mhm.
But yeah, now that when I'm looking at it, I definitely see what you get. It's like a dog that's got a really long chin.
Yeah, and
So,
it looks like the thing above it is like a captain's hat.
It's a
Like
captain's hat.
he's a fucking sailor dog.
all right. We get a flashback into Mujika's past where an adult demon was like, "Listen, Mujika, you'll always be you. We demons can become anything, but we are also nothing. We are scared of hunger and of degeneration. For as long as we have lived, we sometimes fail to understand. To what point are we ourselves? Who are we? What do we want to become?" And so Mujika is like, "I thought about the reason I was born, the significance of my life, and I finally understood after meeting Emma. In the past, we made a promise. We separate our world from the humans, and I was born to change our species, and now is the time for our world to change." This feels very sudden, this whole like demons have no identity thing. I don't think this was established like at all at any point. Obviously, the physical in terms of like how their bodies work and stuff, but I feel like a lot of the demons we've actually gotten to know have very firm personal identities and personalities. Like Luvis, I can tell you what that guy's all about. The guy, Gielan, I could tell you what he's all about. The guy who betrayed them, Daza, I can tell you what he's all about. But so this whole thing, like, oh, we will never know who we truly are, things. Maybe if that was established earlier, that would have been a much bigger thing. It seems to come out.
There's a larger philosophical kind of question that is posed when you're like, demons biologically take on properties of what they eat and change in that way. And to a certain extent, like we know that if they don't eat something that has intelligence, then they sort of degenerate into monsters, baseless, kind of like thoughtless creatures. It's never really shown to be much more nuanced than that. Like I know better, like smarter people get to like better food kind of thing, but it's never been like, it's not like iZombie, where they're like, oh, I ate a stripper the other night. Now I have stripper memories and I have stripper personality or anything like that. Like it's to a certain extent something that doesn't feel nuanced enough that like this conversation would have that much poignancy to it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, because the demons have lived for thousands of years. And we know that, for example, Luvis was doing his whole hunting thing for like hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that never changed. So it doesn't seem as though he really took on a lot of the people that he was eating. Maybe it's something that only happens when you do all of it at once, but she's manifesting people that she ate a long time ago.
Yeah.
Including, by the way, I have to bring this up, sorry, before we get to your point, because we get this like thing where we highlight some of the people that are now manifesting at this point. So, Keelan's there, Dawes is there, the Bayon that you just ate is there, Crone is there as established in the previous chapter. And in between all of them declaring their names, we get this young girl who says, "I'm Michelle." And I'm like, who the fuck is Michelle?
Michelle, Nick.
So I looked her up, Chris.
She's the most important
and
character in the series.
Turns out Michelle was a character that we have seen cameos of, but not named in the manga, who was the subject of one of the spin-off novels. Hooray! So here she is. She makes an appearance and she's named this time. Good for her.
Good. I'm very happy for her. What a poignant moment. Now I feel like I get the whole character Michelle in one big wrap-up.
Lagra Valima starts to just like descend into despair, and she goes, "Who am I?" And Mujika says, "The limes you consumed will devour you. Goodbye, your majesty, the queen, Lagra Valima," as her body starts to basically just disintegrate and dissolve apart. So we beat the queen, guys.
Mhm.
Hooray. I guess that they're gonna go and change the demons now too. Okay.
Hopefully.
This is very odd. It was a way of dealing with it
Mhm.
that I do appreciate, but I think that it would have been. I think it could have been executed a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it has sort of the end you'd expect these. Like, I guess, lieu of Sonju stabbing her in the heart and killing her, this was sort of like the next solution. Sort of like when you have a Disney movie, you're like, well, the hero can't kill the villain, but we could just have the hunter slash enough vines that they kill themselves, or the evil witch trips out a window and falls. Like, we dealt with it the other way that kind of absolves the heroes from having to do anything necessary or controversial or anything like that. It's sort of like she was killed by her own vice. And in a series that tries to be a little bit more, I don't want to say thinking, but tries to go a little bit higher with its themes, it is something where you're like, okay, I guess. But yeah, it's fine. Like, I like it. I like the execution of a lot of it. Clown dog aside, it does have like a sort of visual quality to it that's nice.
Yeah. All right.
All right, Nick, let's talk about Black Clover page 229, the beginning of Hope and Despair. I can't read it. I don't have my glasses on. That text.
It's brown on brown.
It's really not great text on text. We're through our time skip. So we're going to see all of our new characters and their cool new designs. And we start with the Spade Kingdom's evil walking lab spider thing. It's very
It looks like it's walking, but I'm not sure if it is walking, actually.
It is.
I thought it might be floating, but it is on the ground.
Mhm.
So
It is a walking little spider tank thing. And just
it's
to
got to be something that huge to be walking around must be incredibly uncomfortable to ride around in.
Oh, it has to be just hell. This almost feels like Tabata was like, I think not everybody appreciated how brilliant the Mortal Engines movie was. I think cities that are small tanks is a fascinating idea to explore. And just to establish the Spade Kingdom is as evil of a kingdom as possible, they are doing the most evil thing where they're like, we power our cities with people! Specifically, we drain them of all of their magic. And we see Koro Pachika is using Undine's power to basically see what's happening.
This is so lame.
We get an explanation like, okay, the Spade Kingdom's basically already taken over the Diamond Kingdom. They're coming in towards us. We have to kind of make our move. And they say, hey, we've only been able to strengthen upper stage individuals who were beloved by natural mana and had a knack for handling techniques. Who would have thought the magicless boy would get so much stronger by sparring with us? And the fact that he's an arcade stage was a jolt as well. But what really startled me was his hard work, his willpower, and his tenacious strength. And I guess it's not super clear, but I think Asta has a surfboard sword now that lets him fly through the air, because that clearly is what he's standing on as he zooms off into the distance. We go inside the magic tank, and they're like, this group of people are all done. Send the next group in. And a young woman who's holding a child's like, no, please, this girl's very young. She has she'll provide very little fuel for your tank. Don't bother. And they're like, no, we're very evil, so we will use the child and suggest we're going to sexually assault you at the same time.
We will rape you, then we will make you a magic battery.
It's very, very clear. Asta's sword then goes flying in through the window. And boom, he shows up and he says, yeah, Demon Slayer, and calls the sword to him. And Asta, I
have new metal boots.
New metal boots and a couple extra abs on the side. This 6 months was really productive.
I finally started wearing different clothes. But none of my shoulders are so huge now that no shirts will fit me.
Yeah, Asta became a fucking unit was what his training was to be. They were like, we got to make you a big chungus.
My dream of wrestling for the WWF came true, but now I can only wear underwear to the ring.
So the evil guys are like, that robe's from the Clover Kingdom. So much so that I was like, I guess Ladris maybe like went evil again and recruited people because they're all doing the same evil face thing that he did. And everyone's like, what's with this guy? What? He's an idiot. He's here all alone. And the big evil guy turns into a Chinese finger trap monster thing. And it's like, I'll kill you.
No. I'll insta-kill you.
Yeah, he's got cool new. That's Spade Kingdom lingo for you. This is world building. And Asta swings his sword once and defeats everybody.
Oh man, the Spade Kingdom, they're so strong.
He beats everybody with one swing of his sword. And he says, I don't know how many of there you are, but I'll be the one to insta-kill you, so all of you, bring it on right now. And then we cut away to the sister back in her little hamlet outside the remains of the demon. And she says, oh my, it's starting to get cloudy. Oh, hey, there's an unconscious person here. And that's the end of the chapter with the person the person saying, Master Yudo.
This was dumb.
So weird. It's like, so wait, what happened in these 6 months? It looks like Asta got a little bit more buff and he learned to fly on his sword. Like his sword's Mjolnir now. If he calls it out, it returns to his hand. But I guess he can also ride on it like a surfboard.
Also, the Diamond Kingdom has basically been entirely conquered, so...
Yeah, well, hey, I bet the only ones who haven't been conquered are the real 6 Diamond Generals.
They'll never get past me!
Oh, I hope Ladros is okay.
I took a brainwashed king with me into safety.
Yeah, it's like, look, it's just one of those things where Black Clover goes in kind of without any sort of subtlety. And I know this works for some people. I have to find it a little bit amusing that it's like the Spade Kingdom's preferred method of transportation is a tank that consumes people as its fuel source. And I'm like, what is this thing doing? Is it a prison or...
That is not an efficient means of transportation. You kind of drain people's life force. It won't come back.
They're like, we just gotta conquer kingdoms so we can take all the peasants and use them as a fuel source for our tanks so they can invade the next country so we can use them as a fuel source.
Less efficient means of using humans as fuel than the Matrix was. All right. Let's finish things off with One Piece, chapter 962, Daimyo and Vassals. So, we established who Orochi was in the past. We've got everyone is there at Yusuye's place, and so oh gosh, I forgot his name. Odin. Duh. Odin says that he's heard of an ogre living in Kuri by the name of Ashura Doji. So he's going to go out there and see what he can do about that. Because Yusuye, warns him Kuri's bad. Like Lord Sukiyaki can't control it, and if a criminal escapes to Kuri, the authorities don't bother to go get him. If he does not have the strength to survive, only death awaits. But it is so lawless, it might as well be another country. And I was just like, sounds fun. So, after he leaves, a vassal of Yusue's shows him like the room he was staying is just completely trashed. We should, bill him for the repairs. And Yusue's like, no, just consider this a natural disaster. So, but they also say that the money's gone, the money that they had put in the safe. And Orochi comes up like, oh, yes, I witnessed the act of Lord Odin slip the money into his sleeve. And the same vassal who was like, oh, he wrecked the room. How dare he prepare hospitality this way? But Yusuye is like, I feel like Odin wouldn't have bothered to be surreptitious about it. He would have just be like, hey, I've got the money as he walked away. So he's like, are you sure about that, Orochi? And Orochi's like, yes, I'm not the villain. So Odin's party travels from Hakamai. They go for Kuri. Of course, Kinemon and what's his name? Whatever. Sunglasses guy are following Odin as well. Odin was keeping travel notes as they went, and we get kind of a montage of their adventures. So we see that they met two urchin brothers who were sons of the Hanayanagi, sorry, dance master. So there's Kiku before Kiku, began just acting as a woman, and then there is Kiku's older brother Izo. Izo and Kiku both joined Odin's group, and so I was like, well, Izo's not there in the present, so did they die or were they an established character? So I was like, let me look this up. Yes, Izo was an existing character. Why don't I remember them? Because they were one of the many people who served under Whitebeard, and they only showed up for the Marineford arc. And I was like, I don't feel bad about not remembering them.
Yeah, I had to stop for a while. I had to look up who Izo was at first. I was like, I know who Kikunoji is supposed to be, but I don't remember Izo. And then I looked it up. I was like, I vaguely remember you being there. You weren't even one of like the 4 interesting captains that kind of had their own look or anything like that. It was just
you weren't the Diamond guy or the Phoenix guy, so fuck you.
You weren't even the dude with the giant curly mustache with the 2 swords or anything like that. Like you weren't even one of the I just remember like, oh yeah, there was one scene with like a dude in kind of like Japanese attire with like a gun at one point. And I was like, oh, I guess it's that guy.
And then of course, they meet Kandro, they meet Raizo, and then they come, and then we see that Ashura Doji is commanding his men like, Odin's and Kuri, capture him and bring him to me. If I hate anyone, it's the high and mighty. So we see Odin's group is camping around a fire, and they're like, hey, where'd Odin go? He went south to fertilize nature. But they're like, we haven't seen him since yesterday, though. They realize that he is actually headed for Kuri, and Kinemon rushes to try and join with Odin. But when they arrive, the gate's been busted open. Odin has already been met with all of Ashura Doji's men who are there, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And they're all focusing on him. And so Odin's notes read, "You're allowed in, but any who try to leave are killed. Those are the rules of this place. What a cramped life. This is no place for people to live." And Odin, just stares them all down and says, "Tell your boss that a samurai is here. Don't leave. That happens to be my least favorite rule." So he engages them in battle. Kinemon and company go to try and find him, and they're like, "Oh, I see a battle cloud on the mountain." Just one guy fighting everyone raises a battle cloud. And when they arrive, Odin's like, they even follow me here. Sorry, guys, I just finished everything. I've been up all night. He's just surrounded by unconscious people, and he's sitting on top of Ashura Doji's body. And so he says to all of them, "Hey, y'all still, love me? Then lend me your wisdom and strength. I've decided that these worthless hooligans need me as their king." And so all of the lawless ruffians of Kuri were rounded up under Odin's strength, and he turned the hellish wasteland into a place worthy of being called home. And so everyone responds to this news, and they're like, "Wow, what an accomplishment." And even the shogun is like, "Wow." And he retracts the disownment of Odin and gives his son the title Daimyo of Kuri. And so they're like, "Wow." And everyone's celebrating with him, all of the people who have joined with Odin on his journey together. And Ashura Doji is acting kind of weird because he's like, "This is the first time I've ever known peace. Thank you for this." And Odin's like, "Listen, I'm a daimyo now, and a daimyo needs vassals, but I don't want to be assigned stuffy stucco nobles, so I would rather have all of you. You should be my samurai." And everyone cries in happiness and celebrates. And then we get 6 years later, 33 years before the present day. The remnants of the legendary former Rocks pirates began to gather new comrades, steadily expanding their claims in infamy. We cut to Kuri Beach in Wano, as we see the Kappa sumo guy, whose name currently escapes me, as he's come across Kawamatsu. He has come across 2 strange humanoid figures that seem to have like hair and horns, possibly.
Yeah, well, it's Cat Viper and Dogstorm.
Oh yes, their ears are different. That makes sense. So the flashback continues next time.
Well, we'll see the other members of, what do they call them? The
Crimson
Scout. The something 9 or something like that. Yeah.
Zionine, I think. Yeah. Yeah, this is all right chapter.
Yeah,
but not a whole lot. but it was nice.
I like it. It shows why some of these characters have so much loyalty to him, like why Ashura Doji has so much loyalty to Odin. It's like, oh, he turned a shithole place that you and everyone lived into a place that's actually livable and like is now considered a regular part of the country. And he did all of it kind of just, he didn't do it to earn his name back or anything like that. He was kind of just like, shit, this place sucks. It should be better. Hey, let's make these people have a better life. It's nice, you know? He has his own edge to the way he does it, but it's pretty satisfying.
Yes. Okay, guys, that's going to do it for Week of Manga Recap. So we're going to head into closing things out. Favorite series, MVP.
My favorite series this week was Chainsaw Man. I thought it was a super fun chapter. I really enjoyed just the two characters showing up, doing nothing, and then leaving. And I'm excited for the actual end. Like, it was like a cool fight setup, and I'm pretty excited to see what happens next.
My favorite series this week was Seven Deadly Sins. I really liked the weight being given to Escanor's death. Actually, I mean, like, I wasn't entirely surprised, but I was, you know, just like, oh wow, they're actually doing this, and I love that it weighs so much on everyone. So
yeah, I dug that a lot. In that respect, Merlin's gonna be my character of the week. I was considering giving it to Escanor, but I really like Merlin, like singeing her own face and everything like that to kind of express this sentiment, to give Escanor some like real nice feelings before he heads off. I gave Escanor my character of the week quite a few times a couple months ago, so I'm definitely respecting him, but I wanted to give some respect to Merlin as well.
there were a lot of standout character moments in manga this week. There was the stuff with Escanor and Merlin. There was the stuff with Fumino realizing her feelings. But I am giving mine to Anya from Spy Family. And a lot of people who were voting on this, I know, chose Anya as well. But I think it feels like a really big thing for her. This is the first time that she, you know, it seems like she's actually had a bit of a breakthrough in terms of like, oh, I can actually, you know, do something instead of, you know, just kind of going around and just like wanting to play spy and stuff. It feels like she's actually gotten kind of inspired. And hey, she saved a kid from drowning. That's cool.
So the audience picked Anya as their MVP, and their chapter of the week was The Promised Neverland.
All right. That is going to do it, guys. The recommendation we're going to be working on next time. So I'm sure that some of you know, of course, that Pokemon Sword and Shield dropped this week. So it is time to continue our Pokemon adventure by not continuing our Pokemon adventure. I looked into it. The Heart Gold and Soul Silver chapters are kind of weird and it's a very, very short part of it. And I don't know how to roll it into any of the stuff surrounding it. So we're going to be doing something different next time. We are going to be looking at a different Pokemon manga.
What?
We are going to be reading The Electric Tale of Pikachu. It's a short series that came out in like the late 90s. Just a very short story. So that's something that we can probably crank out relatively quickly.
All right. That's what we're doing then.
Yeah. Everyone seems so happy in the chat right now.
I don't understand why. Why is there something bad with it? Should I be like?
It's an odd series, okay, and it's very different. So, okay, let's wrap things up by saying thank you everyone for joining us for the live recording of Weekly Manga Recap. We do it here on Smashcast.tv/RollaT, Twitch.tv/RollaT, Wednesdays around 7:30 to 8 Eastern Time. We follow us on Twitter @DeMar Podcast, @RollaT, @NickFTime for updates. You can also check us out on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com, on YouTube, on iTunes. Check us out on there. Leave a comment, leave a rating, subscribe, all that good stuff to help us out in the algorithm, help us rise to the top of the hobby section. Thank you to everyone who contributes to the Patreon, who is part of the Discord server. You can go on there. You can also contribute to all the votes and everything for MVP, for favorite series, pick out recommendations for us, and all that good stuff. Special thanks to, I'm doing this without my checklist, and I'm very uncomfortable right now. Special thanks to Infamous Planet, to Steve Man, our tire artist, to Winslow Cheddar, and Milo Jack Stillitz for the opening sequence of Weekly Manga Recap, and to NinjaX3i, who maintains all of the spreadsheet stuff and has WMR Votes, the Twitter handle for the polls that are held for the audience each week.
Indeed.
That's it, yes.
All right. Anything else, Nick, before we head off?
No.
All right, guys. I need something to go out on, Nick. I'm blanking.
Give me some. What? Wait. No, I'm not doing this. No, I am no-ending you right now.
Okay. Just gotta come up with something off the top of my head.
Yes. You do it. You can't throw the impetus on me. This is why. Yeah. This you always. Just look around the room, grab something. Like, all right, I'll talk for 20 seconds about this plastic wrapper that I found.
You guys ever think about doorknobs? It's kind of weird. They're not always knobs. Sometimes they're handles. Goodbye, everybody. Keep that in your hat all next week.